All right, welcome everyone. There are a few more people entering in the waiting room now. Awesome, welcome. Once everyone has the little dots go away, I will go ahead and get started. Welcome to the first ever virtual case reveal for the Michigan Center for Civic Education. We are so excited to be kind of bringing everyone together, laying out the case topic here today. We have a quick agenda. It shouldn't, on top of the case reveal, we're going to cover a couple other pieces. We have some new folks, we have veteran folks, so I am going to cover some overall mock trial layout things and the case, as well as highlighting some of the rules changes, and then kind of wrapping up with what we have to look forward to for the year. I want to start with an apology that I know when we launched this idea, we said the case will get emailed out right at the end of this session. The case documents are completed, are in the hands of the mock trial committee for final review and final edits. So there should be live links on the Michigan Center for Civic Education website that lead right now just to the cover pages. And at 6 a.m. tomorrow morning, those links will go live. So you'll be able to access the links, and then I will also send an email to all active coaches with a direct link to those files. So the case files will be live, as well as the rules changes, first thing tomorrow morning. So here's our agenda for the day. I'm going to give a quick overview of mock trial for those of you who are brand new and those of you who are watching this recording not live, just so that we all are on the same page with some terms. We'll talk about the case itself. I'll lay out the story and a little bit of the fact pattern here for our case, as well as a few sneak peeks at some of the exhibits. And then we'll talk about a couple of the rules changes and the plan for the year, and then we'll take any questions. So let's go ahead and get started. We want to make sure that we set the stage, that we're all on the same page. So we want to start with, what is Michigan Center for Civic Education's mock trial? What are our goals? What are our purposes? Whether you're brand new or you've done this for 25 years, we like to make sure that we all start on that same page. And our goal here is about legal education and expanding and elevating what it means to participate in our democratic legal system, as well as creating spaces for professional networking, both for students to network with attorneys to network with each other, teachers to network with each other. It's really about a network of folks who really care about civic engagement and civic education. We also want to lay out our equity framework and talk a little bit about this. When I get to the rules changes, we've actually put this piece into the rules so that, again, we can all start on the same page, that our goal here is about education, accessibility, and competitive equity. This is a competition, absolutely, but only about 20% at a maximum of our teams make it to state finals. So the point and the focus of the work that we do is on the education that happens between now and your regional competition. And so we want to make sure that we're all on the same page and we're all talking about what it means to have access to mock trial education. And so you can see there's a lot of words on this slide, but it really is about how the board of the Michigan Center for Civic Education sees our role and sees how mock trial fits into this equity framework. We hope everyone can agree that these are good goals and help us continue to strive to achieve them. All right, sorry, let's go to the next slide. An overview of the mock trial season. Here we are in October with our case reveal. Registration for teams will open November 1st, and we will have until January 15th to complete those registrations and those rosters. The tournaments will take place in February and March, with our state finals taking place March 23rd, and the prevailing team heading off to nationals in Wilmington, Delaware in May. Quick overview. This is the last piece before we get to the case materials, don't worry. Just a quick overview of where to find our online materials. So our website here at myciviced.org clicking on programs here, and then you'll come to mock trial. There are some resources, including the toolkit that I've been sending out to teams. And then this is new this year, this mock trial sharing folder. If you have not accessed this folder yet, please go back to your emails and click on it. It's also in that document that I just referred to. But there are a bunch of tools here, slideshows, and the case reveal slideshow is going to go there, as well as inside of these folders, especially this regional invite folder, are all of the invitations for all of your invites. So if you want to invite another local school, or there's a judge or an attorney in your community that you'd like to invite, there is a JPEG of each one of the invitations for each of our regional tournaments here in that folder. So we hope that you will help us by distributing and sharing those JPEGs and those invitations for your local tournament with local volunteers in your community, because that is really what makes this program run. And we really heard loud and clear last year from all of you that the biggest question, or the biggest thing that we could see some improvement on here in MCCE's mock trial tournament, is having more volunteers. And so we wanted to try to push resources out that allowed you to help us solve for that problem. So please share those invitations with anyone in your community who might make a good volunteer, whether it be a legal volunteer or an artist or journalist volunteer, or even our hospitality or logistics folks. All right, are there any questions on that initial overview before we move on into what you guys really all came here for? All right, so the 2023-24 case is Taylor Tomote versus the estate of Orville Earhart. It is in fact a civil case, and I'm going to talk a little bit about today about the fact pattern. So our two main characters are Orville, who is a drone enthusiast. Orville is a bachelor who lived on his own in Apple Blossom, Michigan, and his favorite pastime was to fly his drone. Unfortunately, Mr. Earhart has had some medical conditions that led to his untimely death. And his untimely death also came while he was flying his beloved drone. The plaintiff in the case is Taylor Tomote, and Taylor is a gnome enthusiast. Taylor has a wide collection of garden gnomes that mean a great deal to him and to them and their family. And Taylor's gnomes were unfortunately damaged in a crash of this beloved drone. So the question for the Tomote family is, why did this happen? Why did their beloved drones land in the path, or beloved gnomes land in the path of this drone? And what is the remedy for their family when there was more than $1 million in damage to their beloved gnomes? There are some questions about the cause of the crash of the drone. Was it in fact Mr. Earhart's death that led to the crash of this drone into the beloved gnome garden? Or is there something else at play? We have some additional characters here who may have led to the damage of these garden gnomes and may have led to the really fraught damage and personal distress of Mr. Tomote. So we have our witnesses here. Obviously, Taylor is the owner of the gnomes. Cam Leone is our resident individual interested in the art of drone flying, and has some content to provide you about whether or not Mr. Earhart did in fact fly their drone appropriately. And Sergeant Sam Spade is our investigator, so our police officer who was on site the day of the event. Morgan Elby is the executor of the estate. Morgan's uncle Orville was childless, so therefore Morgan is the executor of the estate and the person who will be able to keep whatever whatever assets the estate has left. Corey is Mr. Earhart's nurse. Corey was there for Mr. Earhart for the last 3 years, helping care for them. And they have some input on what happens to the estate as well, as they've received a large payout from the estate upon Orville's death. And then Sandy Boone is our final character here, who may or may not have been involved in the bringing down of the drone. Well, Mr. Earhart was an enthusiast. Our friend Sandy is not a fan of drones. So the question before you is, why did this happen? There's a few other exhibits here. Sandy Boone also may have some questions about whether they are credible, and you can dig more into that in the case. So what happened? What brought down the drone? What caused the damage to the gnomes? And who is responsible? Who should have to pay? Sorry, I'll go back to this. So we hope that the case will be fun for everyone to participate in. We have a cast of very interesting characters, and a series of exhibits, including the gnomes, their appraisal, as well as the medical examiner's report and some other information about drone flying and drone flying regulations. So we are very excited for this year's case and hope that all of the students will enjoy digging into it as well. Are there any initial questions about the case? All right, I do just have a couple other pieces of information for folks before we move on to the rules changes for this year. And we are very, very excited. As you guys have seen from our emails, we've added 2 new regionals, one in the Upper Peninsula, one in Northern Michigan. So we have a number of brand new teams this year. And so we want to just cover, again, the pieces about what makes a mock trial team. So these are the details from the mock trial rules around, there are six roles to play on each side of the case. So your team needs to be made up of 6 to 12 individuals who will participate in a series of trials. We also want to make sure we remind folks that in addition to lawyers and witnesses, Michigan Center for Civic Education's mock trial program also includes the opportunity for students to be journalists and artists in our courtroom. So please consider reaching out to your art or journalism departments or teachers at the school to see if you have 1 or 2 students who might be interested in participating in the companion programs. All right, moving on to the 2023-24 rules changes. Every change that was made, I won't highlight every change that was made from last year's case packet or rules packet to this year, but every change that was made will be highlighted in yellow in the published document when it is published tomorrow morning. I'm just going to highlight the really large, impactful changes. We did during the mock trial retreat. Those of you who were with us will know we made some overarching changes. We, like, for example, explanations of extrapolation was in 4 different locations in our rules packet. We made sure we tried to bring those together and condense them. So there's an entire section on advice and recommendations of how to do mock trial that we pulled out of the rules packet and will be published on our website as well. But we tried to pare it down to just, these are the rules and the procedures for a trial. So the highlighting the rules changes for this year, I've talked about it a little bit. I'm so excited about it. Are some changes to scoring, as well as changes to the caps per number of teams per school, and then how we're going to handle random draw. So I'll dig into that a little bit. First and foremost, the thing we're most excited about this year, which is the inclusion of the Michigan Supreme Court's administrative order on professionalism and civility. The Supreme Court here in Michigan published these rules with the support of a committee of the State Bar of Michigan. And these rules are really designed to guide what makes a good attorney and a good judge here in the state of Michigan. We have taken these principles and integrated them into our performance rating criteria. This really has a twofold benefit for us. One, it lays out a very clear definition of what makes a good attorney, what makes a good witness, what types of criteria are your scoring judges going to be using when they give you that 1 to 10 rating. And we've laid that out in this performance criteria explained, as well as linking the principles themselves. The other benefit that we see is that as we recruit lawyers and judges from across the state to be part of our volunteer corps, they are all on the same page because these are rules and regulations that they themselves must follow. And B, we think it is one more way to really elevate that experience of being a judge and a scoring judge here in our program. So again, we're really leaning into that feedback we got from our teams that we want to see more volunteers because more volunteers make the program stronger. And we think this is a great way to do that. So please review the performance criteria explained to see the changes, and you can even click on the link to the administrative order. The second scoring change is that witnesses will now receive 2 scores. Previously, witnesses only had 1 score, but they will have a spot for their score on direct examination and their score on cross-examination. Again, twofold benefit here, allows us to have more parity. Attorneys already had 2 scores, now witnesses get to have 2 scores, as well as really giving the students the chance to be scored on 2 different skill sets, right? Your direct examination is that prepared examination that you did with your partner, your team, and that cross-examination is a little more on the fly, off the cuff, right? Because you don't know what questions you're going to be asked. So it allows students to be given a score for both of those skills, as those are different skill sets. This is an excerpt from that performance criteria explained, where you'll see again this yellow highlight. That yellow highlight indicates in the rules that that's something that's new or different from a previous year. The next rule change are the number of teams per school. This is verbatim from the rules packet for you. Highlighted in yellow are those changes. So for this year, we're going to lift the cap. It was previously a cap of 3 teams per school, but per the slides I began with when we're talking about equity and expansion of mock trial education, more mock trial is better. More students having the opportunity to participate is our goal. So we are going to allow schools to field as many teams as they can field, with the caveat that we are going to try to keep regionals fair and make sure that teams have the ability to meet other teams. So you'll see in this rule, what we're also going to allow is if your school has more than 3 teams, we're going to allow you to split up to another regional. Our preference is going to be one of the new regionals as we work to expand, but we'll work on an individual basis with each school to find the regional that fits. So I've bolded a different part of this rule where you can see that how it's written. And then just to make sure that everyone understands that, again, this is about growth of mock trial and access to mock trial. Individual schools will only be permitted to advance a team from states from a single regional. So you won't be able to send students to 2 different regionals when both of those regionals have both of those teams head off to states. So you will have to select a regional from which to advance to states. This is a pilot for the year. We hope that it helps us, again, reach more students, expand mock trial. And as always, we will take feedback and discussion with these rules changes to make them fit and work well moving forward. All right, I have 2 more changes that I'm going to talk about. And the first one has to do with the random draw. So again, those of you who've been around, the way that your pairing at regionals was determined was based on a random draw of a pre-paired set of matchups. We have the opportunity to use a new software this year that allows us to pair you on site using set parameters that are laid out in the rules. and the system itself will pair the teams randomly based on the parameters. So you'll still get the random code. You will still have that anonymity with what your team code is, but you will not necessarily have the pairing as soon as you arrive. We'll have to wait till everyone arrives, and then we'll do an automatic pairing. On the theme with having 2 benefits for each thing, the other benefit here is that this system also is going to allow us to do judge pairing and make sure that those same parameters around which scoring judges you've seen, which presiding judges you've seen, and all of that, those same parameters are going to be able to work into the system.
And Lydia, if it's okay,
yep.
to go back just one, we'll spend a lot more time at the next coaches roundtable, kind of talking through the logistics of how this will work. One hopeful benefit, and this is in large response to what you as coaches were asking for and students were, as you know, would have preferred, is that because we can do real-time pairing, we can change up how it gets tabulated. It also gives you more opportunities to get the pairing through a specific software called tabroom.com. The other significant change here that Lydia had mentioned was that for every regional, we still strive for 3 trials, 2 in the morning, lunch, and then a 3rd trial. In the first 2 trials, we will try to make sure that if a school has multiple teams, that those teams won't necessarily face each other in those first 2 trials. With the software pairing and for competitive equity for the state finals, we can switch that over and do a straight pairing for that 3rd trial, so that if a school was matched or had multiple teams that were matched against each other in a particular way, that they would face each other. And then one of those teams would advance or get the ballot from that particular round. So it's kind of a balance of systems from the last 10 or 20 years of what we've been doing, where the first 2 rounds, we will do what we can, depending on the size of the tournament, to make sure that teams from the same school do not face each other. However, because we can now pair and make sure that that's more equitable, they do have a chance to face each other in only that last and 3rd trial.
All right. Those are our slides on rule changes. Again, when it's published, you'll be able to see all of the rules changes highlighted in this bright yellow so that you are able to track through the document and see all the there's a few other small changes in those types of things. So we will take questions for just a couple minutes. We have just 2 or 3 more slides to talk to folks about, but if there are any initial questions about the rules changes or the case reveal, we will take those now. It's a lot of information, and I'm sure, so the last thing I'll say on questions is, just like every other year, we will also publish on the website, that site, the page I showed you at myciviced.org. We'll publish the FAQ document, which there'll be a form that you fill out, put your question in. We will take that question either to the staff or to the mock trial committee, depending on the type of question. And then the answers are then published on a live Word document. It's a Google Doc that we just every week or so we'll publish it. And then anytime we make a change to it, we'll change the version date and email it out to the coaches. So the link won't change. The document is live. The document itself will change, but it allows us to make sure that your school doesn't just email us and get an answer to their question, but in fact, any questions that come in, everyone can see the question and the answer in a public space. So there is a question in the chat about advancing from states. And so the question is, what we said was teams won't be allowed to advance from more than one regional. But the question is, what if 2 teams from the same school have the highest score and advance? And so there have been instances and there have been times when two teams from the same school, advance to states. And so that rule has not changed. The top team or two teams, depending on the formula, depending on the space at states, whoever the top teams are from that regional are the ones that will advance to states. All right, we just have two more slides. The first one is about the Civic Access Access Initiative. We've talked to some of on the coaches roundtables about this, but we want to make sure we talk about it publicly as well. We will be pushing out, now that the case is written, I can finish this part of it. We'll be pushing out an invitation to donors and contributors with a target at law firms across the state, asking them to contribute to the Civic Access Access Initiative. And the goal of this initiative is to raise money to pay grants out to you, to your team, to help cover costs like registration fees, transportation, meals, meeting costs. If a team has other needs, like they need suit jackets or they need other equipment, whatever it is, those grants are designed to support your mock trial team. So we will be publishing a letter as well as going out into the community and doing the fundraising to fund this initiative, but we will also share that fundraising letter with you if you have a firm or a contact in the community who you think would be willing to contribute to make this program accessible. And again, this would be money granted out to the teams to then help pay for the costs of running mock trial with a focus on financial need. So there will be an application process that allows the teams to request funding through the Access Initiative, and that will ask questions about financial need and goals of the program. And then finally, we hope that you're willing to help us share your love of mock trial. I talked about it at the beginning, but I'll remind you again, the most important thing we can do is share what we're doing. So please share the dates, please share those flyers, the fundraising letter with anyone in your community who might be able to support mock trial. But I also would encourage you to take lots of pictures at your meetings and talk to your school and your school board and members of your community about what you're doing and why you're doing it. And the you in this sentence is 100% you, the students. Your teachers can talk all day. Ellen and I can talk all day about what it is we think you're getting out of this program. But when you stand up and you talk to the school board as a student, or you talk to a law firm in your community as a student, that makes a bigger impact than anything we can say. So start thinking about your story, what it is that you love about mock trial, because we're going to ask you to continue to share that with us this year so we can continue to share that with everyone in the community. All right, that is the conclusion. Normal people, it would take 35 minutes, but I talk fast, so it only took me 28. Are there any additional questions about the case, the rules, or Michigan mock trial 2023-24?
And one thing that we might also ask is that we're looking to create some data around the work in mock trial. So in a couple weeks, you might receive a request from us saying, hey, could you, to the coaches particularly, to say, could you provide this really brief survey to your students? And then we would ask you to survey your students as well at the very end of the season, not only for anecdotal data, but also some actual quantitative data that we can show the impact of a program like this. So that is something that's in the works. It's not ready to be officially put on a slide as of yet, but it's hopefully something that we would love to have your involvement with so that we can demonstrate to the world what you already know about how great mock trial it is. Yep. And there's a question in the chat about how are regions determined for a school? And that answer is, we know that not every weekend works for every school based on their geography of where they might be. So you get to tell us your first two preferences for what region would work for your students. And then we will do our best to give you that first preference. And if not, we'll work with you and probably have to assign a second preference. But regions are determined by what you tell us works for you.
Absolutely. Any other questions? Go ahead.
Yes, Lydia, can you tell us what the easiest way to access the YouTube recording of this session will be?
Absolutely. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording because